We're in week 8, and here at the Big Mountain, we've got 3 Big Mountain ice cold locks. Let's see who we got.
College football is back, and we're back on the Big Mountain, where we bring you a detailed focus on the Big Ten and the Mountain West.
Hey, it's great to have you back here on the mountain. I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. Here we go with week 8. We've got 3 Big Mountain ice cold locks. Steve's going to do all the Big Ten games. I'm going to do all the Mountain West games. I've got 2 other games to get into, so let's stop wasting time. Steve, what do you got with the Big Ten?
All right, so let's roll right into it. So we're going to start with the Michigan game. We have Michigan at Michigan State. The line is 24.5, and I'm going to start out with a Big Mountain ice cold lock. I have the Michigan Wolverines to cover 24.5 over Michigan State, and that's our Big Mountain ice cold lock.
And that will be 4 covers if they cover. So you had 4 them not coverings, and now you've got 4 of them potentially coverings.
Let's keep riding.
So this could be 8 in a row if it hits. So 8 Michigan hits in a row.
I feel good about it.
I do too. I'd feel good about that as well.
I felt good about every pick on Michigan this year, and they've nailed it. So let's keep riding that train. All right. So next game we're going to talk about Rutgers at Indiana. Just 2 not great teams. Indiana has been poor most of the season. 1 or 2 games they showed some glimmers. Yeah. Rutgers, I picked them to be low this year. They've been okay. I picked them to struggle. I thought they would struggle. They have struggled, however, maybe slightly overperformed where I thought they would be at. So I'm going to go ahead and pick. This is at Indiana, but I'm going to go ahead and pick Rutgers to cover 5.5. So Rutgers over Indiana minus 5.5.
I like that pick.
Okay. So the next game, another game of just teams, just not great football teams this year. Northwestern at Nebraska. In our preview episode at the beginning of the season, I said, it would take Matt Rule a little while to get this team going. They would struggle out of the gate, which they did, especially offensively. I do think they have improved slightly over the season. Northwestern continues to be terrible. I think they had one amazing win upset earlier in the season, but for the most part they continue to be terrible. They're just bad on both sides of the ball. Nebraska, good solid defense. I don't love the line on this one, but I am going to take Nebraska minus 11.5. Nebraska to cover 11.5 over Northwestern.
That seems a bit high.
It does.
That seems a bit high. I wouldn't be too surprised if but they've been up and down. They've had games where they clearly have played much better than you probably expected early on, and then other games where they're probably the team you expected them to be. So it kind of depends on which Northwestern team shows up here, I think.
I think in general, Nebraska is probably a 2-touchdown better team than Northwestern. Okay. The line of 11.5 being that high gives me a little pause just because Nebraska's offense hasn't been great.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be good enough, so I'm comfortable taking that pick, Nebraska minus 11.5.
Okay.
So our next game, Wisconsin and Illinois. These are 2 teams I had up at the top of the Big Ten West. Both teams have kind of underperformed this year.
Yeah.
Illinois underperformed early in the season. Their defense just wasn't what it was last year. They lost their defensive coordinator, lost a lot of guys to the NFL. But Illinois has kind of been quietly making an improvement, making a comeback. And Wisconsin, they've done about what we thought, but maybe just kind of underachieving slightly as they figure out their offense. They got a new coach, new coordinator. I mean, they're a good, solid team. They're just not wowing anybody with that offense at this point.
Right.
I do expect this to be a very close game. So the line is under 3. The line is Wisconsin minus 2.5, and I'm going to go ahead and take Wisconsin to cover that. So I'm taking Wisconsin minus 2.5 at Illinois.
Okay. Yeah, and you're thinking probably a fairly low-scoring game.
Field goal game.
Yeah. Yep. All right.
Very similar to the next game, Minnesota at Iowa. Iowa, obviously, good solid defense, really good special teams, but their offense is terrible.
Yep.
We've talked about it week after week. They have to average 25 points a game to save their offensive coordinator's job. So far, they haven't come really that close to doing that. No. But they found other ways to score. Last week, I took Iowa and I said it doesn't matter. Their starting quarterback's out for the year. The backup has not shown anything that looks like he's any kind of improvement or anything over their starter. But really, I don't care because they will find a way to score with their defense, with their special teams. Minnesota's just not a good team either.
Yeah.
Minnesota's offense it's just meh. Their defense is just okay.
Yeah.
Their secondary is terrible, which actually could allow maybe Iowa will actually I think Iowa's averaging like 3 or 4 pass completions a game.
Oh my goodness.
And so maybe they'll double that at this point because Minnesota's secondary is so bad.
Yeah.
So I am going to take low scoring game. I'm going to take Iowa minus 3.5. I wish it was 2.5 because I can see this as a field goal game.
Yeah.
But it's at Iowa, tough place to play. I'm going with Iowa minus 3.5.
Yeah, that's the safe play there for sure. I mean, they've shown that even without the offense, again this year, they can still win the football games that they're supposed to win, and maybe stay in games maybe they're not supposed to be in. So their defense certainly carries the weight there, and not a bad pick.
Yeah. Okay, so now we've got the game of the week, possibly the game of the year in the Big Ten. Save the best for last. Penn State at Ohio State. Both top 10 ranked teams. This doesn't happen very often. They don't meet as top ranked teams. This is a game you and I have had pegged as a big game since the beginning of the season, and along with everybody else.
Right.
Penn State at Ohio State, going to the shoe. They're doing a scarlet out in Columbus, which shows you. I mean, obviously Michigan is Ohio State's big rival.
Yep.
But the next team that they fear is Penn State. Penn State, even years where Ohio State just had a lot more talent than Penn State.
Yep.
Penn State has given them everything they can handle. So the line is Penn State plus 4.5.
Right.
Ohio State is 4.5 point favorite. Early in the week, it was 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
Thought about giving that as an early line, but I thought maybe it would go the other way. I wasn't sure.
Right.
But it's actually come down. So Penn State plus 4.5 is the line. Both teams. So Ohio State is slightly lower, slightly down. They appear to be slightly down from what they've been in other years.
Yeah.
They've squeaked by. They squeaked by Notre Dame. Even took them twice with Notre Dame with 10 men on the field to punch that in the end zone. And they just have looked off this year. Mm-hmm. They have covered some spreads, but just anybody observing, their offense, it took a while to get in gear. They didn't know who their starting quarterback was going to be. Mm-hmm. They do have a bunch of 5-star wide receivers. They have a good tight end. Marvin Harrison Jr., possibly the best overall football player in the country. Mm-hmm. So when their offense isn't clicking, they can just force feed him the ball. Ohio State's running game has just not worked well this year.
Yeah.
They've had guys out. Both their top 2 running backs have spent some time out this year. So that is what it is. But their offensive line, I think they had 3 offensive linemen get drafted in the NFL, so they're trying to replace those. They got somebody in the transfer portal.
Yep.
And at this point, it's just not that usual dominant offensive line that you expect from Ohio State. And it's also not that elite quarterback play.
Right.
Kyle McCord,
Right.
he has gotten the job, and he's improved throughout the season. So I'm not knocking Kyle McCord, but Ohio State fans are used to having that elite quarterback play, the guy that's going to be the number 1 draft pick, or the guy who's just an amazing athlete, the best athlete on the field, and they just don't have that this year.
Yep.
On the other hand, Penn State. Now, I will say Penn State's offense has not been lighting the world on fire. They have not been hitting the big plays this year. Mm-hmm. Brought in 5-star quarterback Drew Aller. He's been very efficient, more of a dink and dunk this year. He's taking what the defenses have given him. Mm-hmm. The running game has been fine, not amazing. The big thing with Penn State's offense last year versus this year is last year they were hitting those big plays.
Right.
They had the big running plays.
Right.
This year they're doing it 5, 6, 7 yards at a time.
Yeah.
Sustaining drives. They covered the spread every week.
Yep.
But the story with Penn State this year is their defense.
Yep.
I personally think they may have the best defense in the country. Manny Diaz, his second year as a coordinator. Their pass rushers, Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, Denai Dennis Sutton, great pass rushers. Their interior defensive line pretty good. Linebacker core is solid, and an elite secondary.
Yeah.
We talked earlier in the season, they lost 2 players in the secondary to the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think they might be playing better in the secondary this year, even losing those guys, which is amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So the Penn State defense, they've been top 10 in both categories all season, running against the rush, against the pass. They're top 10 against for scoring defense, maybe even the top 5. And so that's kind of where I see the battle is Ohio State's offense maybe slightly down from where it's been. Penn State's defense, absolutely elite. So I'm going to go ahead and take Penn State plus 4.5.
Yep.
I like them taking the points. I see this as a close game.
Yep.
If for money line bettors, I'm not really a money line guy.
Right.
But if I saw at one point this week you could get Penn State plus 160 on the money line earlier in the week. I think it's a good money line play because I have this game as a dead even 50-50. So I'm taking Penn State plus the points, Penn State plus 4.5. That's my pick for the game.
And I completely agree with you. I think I'm anxious to watch this game. I'm anxious to watch the Ohio State offense versus the Penn State defense. I think that's going to be the story of who wins this game. If the defense can control Ohio State's offense for the reasons you mentioned, the O-line, the quarterback, it's just not the offense that they're typically used to. And Penn State's defense being one of the best that they've had in a long time probably. That's going to be the story of this game.
Totally agree.
Penn State's defense, Ohio State's offense, and everything that I've seen so far out of both of them lead me to believe I'm putting my money on Penn State's defense over Ohio State's offense. So I agree with that pick, and that's the reason why I'd be hedging towards, and the money line hedging towards Penn State in this matchup.
Huge game for the Big Ten. It's kind of a three-way battle. You've been on Michigan all year as the number one team. Ohio State has that big win already against Notre Dame. They could really improve their resume with a win over Penn State. Mm-hmm. And Penn State, they haven't beat Ohio State since 2016. So it's been 7 years. This is, they look forward to this game every year. They mark this on the calendar. That's their big. This is a huge opportunity. This maybe is the best team that James Franklin has had in his tenure at Penn State. So really, this is the year. They've got the quarterback. They've got the defense. Yep. And they're maybe catching Ohio State on a little down year. So if you're a Penn State fan or you're looking to buy on Penn State, it really does look like this is the year. So just an absolute huge game in the Big Ten. So that's all my picks. Do we want to do a quick rundown?
Yeah, why don't you go through them there quick?
Okay. So I'm going to go back down in reverse order. So again, we said Penn State plus 4.5, taking Penn State plus the points at Ohio State. Rutgers, I'm taking Rutgers to cover 5.5. Mm-hmm. Nebraska, I'm taking them to cover 11.5 at Northwestern. I think they should be about 2 touchdowns better. So Nebraska 11.5. Wisconsin to cover 2.5 at Illinois. Iowa to cover 3.5. They're hosting Minnesota. And then our Big Mountain ice cold lock, the Michigan Wolverines to cover 24.5 over the Michigan State Spartans, and that's our Big Mountain ice cold lock.
Awesome. Great rundown, Steve. Let's get into the Mountain West, and I'm going to start with a lock, just like you.
Let's go.
I'm going to come in hot. We got Air Force playing Navy, and the line here is 10.5. I'm surprised this line is so low. Yeah. I don't have an update, and I really didn't look for an update on the quarterback, Larimer, for Air Force. I don't really care about Larimer's. I hope he's okay. I hope he can play. But to me, I don't care who's at quarterback. This should be an easy win for Air. The way they have been playing and the way Navy has been playing, I'm surprised this is 10.5. I think this is easy, a 2-touchdown victory plus for Air Force. So I'm taking Air Force at minus 10.5 with an ice cold lock.
All right.
Next one we've got, you'll be excited here, Steve.
Okay.
Hawaii and New Mexico.
Battle of the Terribles.
I gotta talk New Mexico because you love me when I bring up New Mexico or New Mexico State, either one.
Yeah.
The line here is 1. Okay. Minus plus 1. So it's basically a money line. It's a money line bet. Flip a coin. Vegas doesn't even know who's going to win this game. I was on New Mexico last week. They underperformed what I thought they would do against a San Jose State team that has been underachieving this year. And Hawaii team that played San Diego State fairly well, especially offensively. So I think this could be a high-scoring game. Both of these teams have offensive upsides. But I'm going to go with Hawaii. I was impressed here with specifically their passing game against San Diego State last week. So I'm going to ride the rainbow here, and I'm going to take Hawaii at minus 1. Okay. You can money line that. It's going to be super similar.
You going to be eating your Skittles when you watch that
I'm
game?
going to be popping my Skittles, again, riding the rainbow with Hawaii. Next game, we've got UNLV and Colorado State. Colorado State, a team I just can't figure out. They were gifted a victory last week against Boise. I shouldn't say that. I'd take things away from Colorado State. But I don't know how they won the game. I don't even know how Boise didn't cover that game. But they got a big test here with UNLV. I think this is a UNLV team that is riding all kinds of momentum right now. They've got their game figured out. The line is 7.5. I would love it at 6.5. I still really like it at 7.5, and I like it so much, I'm making this my second Big Mountain Ice Cold lock, UNLV, minus 7.5.
Lock it up.
Next one we got Utah State and San Jose State. 4.5 line here, so again, fairly close, but I'll tell you what, I was big on San Jose State's offense to start, but Utah State's offense specifically, again, the passing offense here, blows me away. San Jose State has shown that they can give up a ton of points here in the season. I think this is a very high-scoring game, and the way Utah State can sling this thing around, I'm going to take points here with Utah State, and I'm taking them plus 4.5.
What do you think about the over in that game? Is that something you're looking
I didn't look at the over. Maybe do a game day pick on that. I didn't look at it here for this, but depending on where that's at, I could easily see this thing going over. These offenses can definitely score points.
So people should look out for that possible game day pick. Subscribe, set up your notifications. JY loves doing those game day picks for you.
Yep. We got one more here, Steve. One more big Mountain West game. San Diego State at Nevada, and I will say this is a game that I'm gonna make a pick on it, but I do not feel good about this pick at all. Not like the other four. I'm gonna take San Diego State here at minus 13.5. That's a high spread. Their defense has underachieved. Their offense maybe has done okay, but Nevada's shown that they can put up points. I really thought about taking the points with Nevada, but I'm going to go back to my preseason thoughts on San Diego State. I'm not going to give up on them quite yet, even though I'm very close to giving up on them. I'm going to go back to my preseason thoughts on San Diego State. I'm going to take them at minus 13.5 over Nevada.
Okay.
So 2 other picks. I'm going back to the Georgia State team. I haven't picked them here in a couple weeks, but they are getting points against Louisiana Lafayette. The Raging Cajuns, right? Isn't that who they are?
Yeah.
And they get a lot of national love from the Sun Belt division. But I've been on this Georgia State team. They can score points. They did have a flub up a couple weeks ago, but they've come back strong here this week. And I'm going to take the points here with Georgia State plus 3.5. I could even see them winning this thing outright. So give me the points. Georgia State plus 3.5.
Okay.
And then the last one, I'm going back to the well here, Steve. I locked them. Fantastic game last week against Oregon, and they play an Arizona State team that is really struggling this year. So Washington, if you haven't figured out who I'm talking about, Washington minus 27.5 against Arizona State. I see no reason this is not a 30-plus point spread here. I think Arizona State's going to struggle to score. We know what Washington's offense can do. And we look back 2 weeks ago when we went, what happened there against Arizona? But Arizona's actually been playing some darn good football here
playing well, yes.
of recent. So maybe not so much Washington underachieving as, hey, maybe Arizona's got a better team than anybody thought. So Arizona State is not Arizona.
Right.
So I'm taking the Washington Huskies at minus 27.5 for my second other pick. So let's go down these here real quick. Mountain West, we got Air Force minus 10.5 over Navy. That is a big Mountain Ice Cold lock. I've got Hawaii, -1 over New Mexico. UNLV, my second big Mountain Ice Cold lock at minus 7.5 over Colorado State. I'm taking the Aggies at Utah State, getting 4.5 points over San Jose State. And maybe a bit begrudgingly, I don't know, we'll see. I'm taking San Diego State minus 13.5 over Nevada. I did lock San Diego State last week, and they did win it for me. So maybe they go on a bit of a tear here in terms of beating the spread. Hopefully they will for us. And then we've got Georgia State plus 3.5 over Louisiana Lafayette, and Washington minus 27.5 over Arizona State. So that'll sum it up for this week's picks. We appreciate you turning in. Let us know your comments, which picks you really like, maybe which picks you're questioning us on. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. We will probably be doing game day picks. I didn't get any out last week. There's just nothing that really tickled my fancy. Yeah. But as we said, that over on the Utah State, San Jose State, maybe something I look at. Maybe a pick on the Utah game too. I'm thinking about picking Utah here against Washington State. So anyway, hey, we appreciate you turning in. We'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.